Have you ever considered that the weight of your sadness, isolation, or despair might be something more than just pain? What if these feelings aren't simply symptoms, but sacred signals, markings of a deeper calling, a purpose only you are meant to fulfill? Throughout history, the most powerful souls have carried a burden that would break ordinary men. Your feelings are no accident. They are the rumbling of a call that few can hear, the tremors of a purpose that presses against your heart like iron. It is not mere sadness, not just loneliness. These intense emotions surge within you because you too are being summoned. The weight you feel is the weight of a divine calling, a message that, if you fail to carry it, might die unspoken. You are not a wanderer in the dark. You are the torchbearer, and even if your flame flickers, it holds the power to ignite a path forward for others. Elijah, the prophet who called fire from heaven, felt this crushing weight. He too once wished for his own life to end, fleeing to the wilderness, collapsing under the juniper tree. His soul groaned in despair, exhausted by the ceaseless demands of a world that could not understand his purpose. Yet it was in his weakest hour that Elijah was met by a whisper, a holy sound that reignited his spirit. That still, small voice was not there to coddle or to lighten his load, but to remind him of the fierce strength that lay within his calling. Elijah was not allowed to succumb to his anguish because he had a mission. So do you. Your darkness is not a void. It is the echo chamber in which your divine purpose resounds, demanding to be heard. Moses, who delivered a nation from the bonds of slavery, felt the crushing sorrow of his mission. He was no stranger to doubts so intense, they left him begging to be relieved of his task. In the wilderness, leading a people who often doubted and resented him, Moses pleaded, feeling himself too broken, too weary to continue. Yet, in his vulnerability, he was met with the unwavering assurance that his life was not his own. It was bound to the liberation of countless others. Your struggles too are not a solitary burden, but a mission that may lead others out of their own captivity. Just as Moses' soul was forged in the fires of purpose, your suffering is the crucible shaping you for the lives you are meant to reach. And then there is Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, who felt as though his words were fire shut up in his bones. His heart was crushed by the message he carried, a message of judgment and redemption that made him despised and mocked. He questioned why he had been chosen for such torment, wishing he had never been born. But even in his lament, his words reached beyond his suffering, searing through the ages. Jeremiah's pain was not his enemy. It was the anvil that forged his voice to resonate for centuries. Like him, the weight you carry is not a curse, but the force that will shape your message into something unbreakable. These figures did not crumble under their burden because it was never just about them. It was about what they were meant to bring into the world. When you carry a purpose, the weight of it can feel like an invisible hand pressing down on you, a hand that won't let you rest. It fills your quiet moments, tinges your joys with a sense of urgency, and makes even the simplest conversations feel shallow, as though the world around you is a layer you cannot fully touch. People laugh, speak, and live beside you, but their voices are muffled, distant, unable to reach the place where you stand. And you stand alone, chosen yet estranged, with a force within you that does not bend or quiet down. This burden, this divine insistence, isolates you because it marks you as someone set apart, someone who must carry out what few understand. Moses understood this weight. Born into wealth and raised with every privilege, he walked among royalty, surrounded by the opulence of Egypt. But even within that world of gold and indulgence, a voice beyond the palace walls spoke to him. Moses could have ignored that call, could have stayed comfortably anonymous within the shelter of his privilege, yet he felt a relentless pull, a calling that made his former life unbearable. He saw his people suffering, felt their burdens as his own, and knew his spirit would find no peace until he left behind the palace and faced a life of hardship, driven by the divine hand upon him. You too may feel the discontentment of living within ordinary paths. It is not because they are insufficient, but because your calling is woven into your very soul, driving you to something larger. The prophet Jeremiah also felt the isolation that comes with a divine calling. Known as the weeping prophet, His life was marked by sorrow and solitude. Jeremiah carried a message that others neither wanted to hear nor understood, a message of judgment and redemption that made him an outcast. His words, like fire within his bones, could not be silenced, yet they brought him rejection and despair. He even cursed the day of his birth, agonizing under the weight of a purpose that consumed him. Yet his loneliness was not without reason. It was the shaping force, hardening his spirit, making him a voice that resonated beyond his suffering. Like Jeremiah, you carry words, ideas, or actions that may separate you from others, but it is this separation that strengthens the core of your message. Elijah too knew the exhaustion of bearing a divine assignment. After a powerful display of faith, calling down fire from heaven, he fled to the wilderness, overcome with fatigue and a desire for death. He had stood alone against hundreds, his faith unshakable in the face of danger, but the emotional toll left him broken and isolated. Beneath a juniper tree, he lay and wished for an end, yet he was met by an angel, by a reminder that his task was not complete. Elijah's burden was his loneliness, his doubts, his isolation, and yet in his darkest hour he was called back, reminded that he could not abandon his path. Your exhaustion too is not a sign of failure, but of a calling that demands everything you are. The burden you carry, the weight pressing on your spirit, is not an affliction, but a masah, the divine load given to the chosen. In Hebrew, masah signifies a burden beyond the physical, a demand that penetrates the soul, pushing against your very essence with the full force of its expectation. This weight is not an arbitrary sadness. It is a call that anchors your spirit, commanding that you speak, that you act, that you move as an instrument of divine purpose. You feel this pressing demand because you are a steward, entrusted with a purpose that demands your whole being. It is not here to destroy you. It is here to refine you, to strip away all that is unnecessary, so that only what is true, what is bold, and what is eternal remains. If you're struggling with the weight of this purpose, if you feel this call but need guidance on how to carry it with strength and clarity, join Obsidian Inner Order, powered by Astral Atom. Here, you'll find the tools to understand and embrace this masah, to refine your spirit under its pressure, and to stand as the powerful instrument of purpose you were always meant to be. The link is in the description below. Isaiah felt this masah profoundly. He saw visions, images seared onto his mind by divine fire, images he could not forget or turn away from. His task was not easy or comforting. He was commanded to bear witness to his people's stubbornness, their impending downfall. Yet, in this vision, he saw the glory of God and was undone by it, crying out from the depths of his being, feeling unworthy, feeling his lips tainted. But even in that moment, he knew he was called to speak. You too have a voice that trembles under the weight of divine purpose, one that cannot remain silent without your spirit feeling hollow. Like Isaiah, this masah burns within you, purifying and sharpening your message until it emerges as clear and as fierce as a blade forged in flame. Habakkuk also bore the masah, the weight of witnessing injustice and feeling the divine mandate to cry out against it. He saw his people suffering, saw oppression festering among them, and felt a visceral need to question, to challenge even God with the injustice around him. His burden was to voice the anguish of the people, to give words to what others were afraid to admit. This masah drove him to the edge of his faith, yet he knew he could not turn away. For you too, the things you see, the injustice that gnaws at you, is not for you to dismiss. You carry this awareness because you, like Habakkuk, are tasked to be a witness, to cry out against what others might overlook. This weight, heavy as it may feel, is the very force that sharpens your voice, your vision, so you can speak what must be heard. Jeremiah, who knew his calling from a young age, bore a masah so great that he could feel it as fire shut up in his bones. His message was one of warning, a call to repentance that would make him an outcast among his people. His every step was shadowed by the weight of his calling, a message that he could not suppress without tearing his own soul apart. He bore this masah despite the rejection, despite the isolation, because he understood that this burden was not given lightly, that his words carried a gravity beyond his own life. Like Jeremiah, you feel the Messiah as an inescapable urge, a message that demands to be spoken, even when it costs you comfort and acceptance. It is this weight that fuels the fire within you, forcing you to act, to bring forth a truth that others need, whether they accept it or not. This Messiah is not a choice, it is a sacred duty. You were chosen to carry this weight because you are strong enough, willing enough, and your spirit fierce enough to bear it. Your calling is not simply yours, it is a mission that echoes through you, a purpose that demands you carry it with the strength of all you are. Your sensitivity, sharp as a blade, cuts through the veil that blinds most of the world to unseen realms, making you acutely aware of spiritual energies others pass by unknowingly. You sense the weight of unspoken struggles, the tension of unseen battles, and it strikes your soul with an intensity that can leave you breathless. This is no ordinary awareness. It is a depth of perception reserved for those chosen to stand as sentinels, watchful in spirit, bearing a discernment that digs into hidden layers. The air around you hums with currents of both light and shadow, and you feel it, each shift as real as the ground beneath your feet. This awareness, this heightened sensitivity, is a gift, a tool for your calling, yet its weight can be immense, for it means you carry the sorrow, the joy, and the tension of realms beyond sight. David, the shepherd king, possessed this heightened awareness, sensing the presence of God with a keenness that set him apart from others. While still a young shepherd, he faced the lion and the bear, perceiving strength beyond his own. When he played his harp before Saul, David's music held a power beyond melody. It quieted the tormenting spirit because David's hands were attuned to spiritual forces. You too are a vessel for this deeper power, gifted with a sensitivity that can transform environments, though it also draws you into spiritual conflicts others may not perceive. This awareness is not meant to isolate, but to align you with forces of purpose, grounding you in divine strength, as it did for David, the one whose heart beat in tune with realms unseen. The prophet Ezekiel was also marked by this heightened sensitivity, feeling the pulse of divine realities in visions that left him speechless. He saw wheels within wheels, creatures with eyes everywhere, symbols that revealed the complexities of God's workings. Ezekiel's spirit absorbed these images deeply, feeling the weight of heavenly realms pressing into his mind. His heightened awareness drove him to his knees, pulling him into revelations beyond human grasp. Your sensitivity, like Ezekiel's, is a double-edged experience, at once illuminating and overwhelming, pushing you to see past earthly concerns. This sensitivity requires grounding, as Ezekiel did in his faith, to carry the weight of these divine impressions without losing yourself in their intensity. And then there is Jesus, whose empathy was unmatched. Walking among crowds, he felt the pain of every soul, sensed the brokenness of hearts with a precision that transcended mere intuition. He wept at Lazarus's grave, not for himself, but because he bore the grief of those around him. He touched the untouchable, sensed the needs unspoken, and met them with compassion. This empathy, this depth of feeling, is a trait woven into the calling of the chosen. You feel others' emotions, their hidden battles, and it sometimes threatens to engulf you. Yet, like Jesus, this empathy is not a burden but a conduit of healing, a tool that allows you to reach others at a profound level. Your calling sharpens your senses, pulling you into realms unseen by those around you. This is not an illusion, nor is it a fleeting impression. It is the deep reality of your heightened awareness, a gift bound to the chosen ones. You feel spiritual atmospheres like a physical touch. Pressures that others ignore linger on you, weighing upon your spirit as though they were carved into the air itself. Where others walk with ease, oblivious to the forces moving around them, you feel every subtle shift, every shadow, every ripple of energy in a space. This sensitivity is not a mere perception. It is a form of sight that transcends vision, drawing you into the spiritual realities that press against the visible world. Isaiah bore this sensitivity with an unshielded heart. In his vision, he was drawn into the throne room of God, where the foundations shook and the air was filled with smoke. He saw the seraphim, heard their voices, and was undone, knowing he was unclean before a holy God. His calling made him profoundly aware of the spiritual reality others missed. This heightened awareness was not a comfort, but a continual awakening to the weight of purity and divine holiness. For you too, this heightened awareness can be overwhelming. You sense what others dismiss, carrying the spiritual weight of atmospheres that can feel crushing. Yet, like Isaiah, this sensitivity grants you a clarity that is rare, a vision that lets you stand as a voice for things unseen. This sensitivity often comes with an intense empathy, a way of feeling that reaches far beyond surface emotions. As a chosen one, you bear an empathetic resonance that few can understand. You sense the pain of others, absorb it, and it leaves an imprint on you, sometimes like a wound. Where others might sympathize, you feel the weight as though it were your own. This is not accidental. It is part of your calling, a way for you to connect deeply with others and to speak to their souls. Jeremiah carried this empathy, weeping not only for his own sorrow, but for the collective sorrow of a people who could not see the destruction that awaited them. His heart was bound to their pain, even when they rejected his words. You too may carry the burdens of others, experiencing their sorrows and struggles as though they were imprinted onto your soul. This deep empathy enables you to reach others in ways few can, drawing them toward healing through a connection that runs deeper than words. But with this profound sensitivity comes the challenge of balance. The intensity of these spiritual impressions, this empathy, can sometimes threaten to consume you. It is easy to feel overwhelmed, as if you were drowning in the emotions and atmospheres that flood your spirit. The weight of this awareness can make daily life feel exhausting, as if you were carrying not only your own spirit, but those of countless others. Elijah faced this danger in his own way. After confronting the prophets of Baal, after bearing the weight of an entire people's defiance, he fled into the wilderness, feeling utterly spent, wishing for his life to end. He had poured out everything, exposed to the intensity of his mission, feeling the resistance, the struggle, and the darkness around him. This sensitivity, left unchecked, drove him to the brink, yet he found strength again when divine provision sustained him in his solitude. Like Elijah, you must learn to find moments of grounding, of stepping back from the weight, lest it consume you entirely. Finding balance does not mean numbing yourself or dulling this awareness, but learning to ground your spirit, to protect it amidst the intensity. For many chosen individuals, spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, grounding rituals, become essential, acting as anchors in the shifting spiritual seas around them. These practices create spaces where your awareness can rest, where the waves of empathy and heightened perception can be held without overtaking you. Without these practices, sensitivity can become a burden that isolates you. With them, it becomes a force of connection, clarity, and strength. Your calling is not to be untouched by the world, but to touch it deeply, to feel its shadows and yet carry light. This heightened awareness is a gift, a divine sight, given so you may stand where others would falter, see what others cannot, and speak to the depths of the human soul. You are both witness and healer, granted a vision that pierces through surfaces, a heart that resonates with others' struggles. To carry this gift is a challenge, yet it is the very essence of what sets you apart. The weight you carry is more than just a burden. It is a message, a force bound within you, pressing to be spoken, to be set free. Expression is not a luxury, but a necessity for those who bear this calling. Your words hold power, each one a key that can unlock the weight and let it flow out of you, bringing relief to your mind, peace to your spirit. Silence is the cage that binds this burden tighter. When you hold back, you let it grow, compressing and deepening within, thickening the air around you until it threatens to consume you whole. The moment you speak, however, you give form to what was once intangible. Your words become pillars, holding up the weight instead of allowing it to collapse within you, bringing clarity and light into places where heaviness once ruled. Elihu, a voice in the story of Job, understood the power of expression. Watching Job and his friends wrestle with silence and incomplete answers, Elihu felt the intensity of his own thoughts rise within him like a storm building in his chest. His words were like fire shut up inside, and he could not hold them back. Finally he spoke, not to condemn but to release the wisdom given to him. "I am full of words," he said, "and the spirit within me compels me. My belly is like wine that has no vent." Elihu's expression was not merely for others, it was an outpouring that freed him, a release of the tension that had swelled within. When you speak, when you find the courage to let words escape, you too release a burden. Like Elihu, you are called to give voice to the truths within you, to let them live outside you rather than suffocating within. David, the psalmist and warrior, understood this power intimately. His words, often poems of sorrow, praise, and questioning, were his lifeline. He poured his soul onto parchment with fierce vulnerability, not afraid to reveal his pain, his fears, and his victories. When he felt the weight of isolation or the sting of betrayal, he let words flow like a river from his heart, bringing him into communion with God, bridging the gaps his trials had created. Through his psalms, David found relief. He broke open his silence, releasing the heaviness and letting it pour out as offerings. You too have this gift within reach. Expression is not a weakness but a force of release, allowing your spirit to uncoil, to loosen the cords that bind it, and to lift the darkness that accumulates within. Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet, bore a burden so intense it nearly shattered him. But Jeremiah spoke out, even when his words were unwelcome, even when they brought him rejection and isolation. His honesty before God and his people was his relief, his lifeline. When Jeremiah cried, "My heart is broken within me, all my bones shake," he transformed his suffering into a powerful testament. This release of words gave him strength, as each expression of his pain and prophecy allowed him to step more firmly into his calling. Like Jeremiah, your words are not merely sounds. They are a balm for the wounds carried within, a strength that rises with every truth you voice. The prophet Habakkuk too knew this need. Confronted by the violence and injustice of his time, his spirit stirred with anger and sorrow. But Habakkuk did not stay silent. He brought his questions, his frustrations, and his despair directly to God. He cried out, asking, "How long, Lord, must I call for help?" His voice did not fall unheard. In speaking his heart, he engaged in a dialogue that strengthened his faith and clarified his purpose. Through expression, Habakkuk found understanding and peace amid turmoil. Your words, like his, have the power to reshape your perception, to give form to the formless, and to bring light to what feels shadowed. Expression is a practice of release and connection. It allows you to transform the pressure within into clarity, replacing heaviness with understanding, darkness with purpose. Each word spoken or written gives shape to the inexpressible, translating the weight into something that can be seen, touched, and understood. You are called not only to bear the burden, but to release it, to let it spill out of you in ways that bring peace to your own soul and resonate with others who bear similar weights. Words are your ally, your means of transformation, your pathway to relief. To hold back is to invite the burden to deepen, but to speak, to express, is to let your spirit breathe. You carry a weight that sets you apart, a heaviness that most would neither understand nor withstand. This burden is not a punishment, it is a divine invitation, a calling that demands your courage, your voice, and your unwavering strength. You may feel stretched like iron under the hammer, but this is the refining of your purpose. Your sadness, your sense of isolation, and your heightened sensitivity are not obstacles. They are signals, pointing you toward the expression that will release the tension inside you. You are not here to blend into the world's noise. You are here to stand out, to voice truths others cannot see, to be a vessel for meaning that reaches beyond yourself. This weight does not seek to break you, but to awaken the voice that is unique to you, a voice forged in fire and resilience. Within you lies a message, a story, a truth that must be shared. By embracing your calling, by releasing the words that echo within, you transform this burden into a gift, a source of peace not only for yourself but for others who need to hear it. You are not just one among many. You are chosen, set apart, a prophet of your own kind, bearing the authority and strength to shape lives through your expression. To all of you who feel as though the weight is too much, who wonder if you can keep moving forward, understand this. You are not defeated, you are empowered. You are entrusted with something extraordinary, something the world needs. This burden, this calling, finds its fulfillment when you speak, when you share, when you give form to the fire within. Step into your role, embrace the weight, and let your words resonate. Share your story, for it is not only yours, it is a beacon for those waiting to be guided by your light.